How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation, and sorry, my voice is still messed up. This is the weirdest cold I've ever had because it didn't make me feel bad. It just gave me a ton of boogers that all went into my throat, and now I can't talk right. So hopefully I heal up soon and you don't have to deal with this anymore, but thanks for bearing with me. In today's video, I've got 3 topics to cover, starting out with 25 years of the PlayStation 2, and I gotta ask a question. Where is the PS2 Mini? After that, we're gonna talk about how Sony is putting in extra work to turn the PS Portal into a real handheld. And finally, some screenshots leaked from Bluepoint's canceled God of War game, and I'm not really interested in a live service God of War, but I like the direction they were heading in, and could it have some hints for the future? Before I jump into it, it would really help me out if you subscribed and set your notifications to all, but let's jump into the first news story here and talk about the PlayStation 2. I think one of the biggest reasons Sony might be considered the best console maker at this point is that you could point to basically all of their generations and make a very solid argument for it being the best. I mean, the PS1 started it all. The PS3 had some of the best exclusives Sony's ever put out. The PS4 had a great operating system, great performance, and expanded on all those great exclusives from the PS3 generation. The PS5 is pretty much bar none the best hardware you can get on the market right now. So that leaves the PS2. And I think if you asked anyone what their favorite PlayStation console is, the vast majority of them would say the PlayStation 2. It's still the best-selling console of all time. Sony went in and said, oh, we figured out 5 more million PS2s have been sold over the past few years, so we bumped up the numbers so that the Switch wouldn't beat us, and I'm fine with that, because as much as I loved the Switch 1 when it came out, I still think the PS2 is by far the better console, and I can't believe it's 25 years old. The hardware is great. They advanced the DualShock controller into the DualShock 2. Of course, a lot of people bought it just to be their DVD player because it ended up being around $100 after a while, and it was cheaper than buying a dedicated DVD player. But what really makes or breaks any console, which is a lesson that a lot of manufacturers still have to learn, is the games you can play on it, and the sheer volume of high quality games that came out from third party and first party on the PlayStation 2 was absolutely phenomenal, like still unbeaten to this day. And a lot of the big first party studios that we look at as the best in the industry today, they started as third party studios during the PS2 era. Companies like Insomniac were making games like Ratchet and Clank, Sucker Punch was making Sly Cooper, and then they made Infamous. I'm not sure when they got bought. I think it was before Infamous, but you can definitely see the scale up from Sly Cooper to Infamous. Naughty Dog, of course, started way back on the PS1 with Crash Bandicoot, and now they're making Intergalactic. They made Uncharted, The Last of Us, X, Y, and Z. There's tons of studios who all got their start in the early days of PlayStation 2. Then you had the weirder stuff like Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, and of course, the biggest game of all from Sony's first party was from Santa Monica Studio with God of War and God of War 2. I used to go to the mall with my mom to do Christmas shopping, and one of the GameStops at the mall had every demo kiosk. It had an Xbox, a PlayStation 2, and a GameCube. And one day, I decided to walk up to the PS2 one, and God of War 2 was the demo, but they didn't have the demo disc in there. They had the whole game. So I got to sit there for a couple of hours and play the intro, like few levels, I would say, of God of War 2, and I was like, I don't know how you could make a game that looks better than this. Like, honestly, it is one of the greatest looking games ever still to this day, and I can't believe the guy at the desk let me play it because I was a child, and that game was severely rated M, so, you know, that might have started my bloodlust that I had as a child, but who knows? It's one of the only franchises that Sony had from that era that's still going to this day, except for, of course, Gran Turismo. Now, you guys know I love Gran Turismo 7. I put a ton of hours into GT7. I like GT Sport. I like all the Gran Turismo games, except for 6. It just felt a little boring when it came out because it was in the end of the PS3 generation, but the best GT of all time is Gran Turismo 4. It has the greatest campaign in pretty much any racer. The whole idea of buying used cars and racing around different tracks with just regular old street cars, it never gets old. And the cool thing is, a modder went through the work to like upscale it, add new textures, add modern lighting effects, add new cars, revamp the campaign with a mod called GT4 Spec 2. I play that on my Steam Deck still all the time because it's just the greatest racing game of all time. And then when it comes to third party, I mean, like, where do you want to start? You got Resident Evil 4, of course, my all-time favorite game, only usurped by its remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake, because it's taking the greatest game ever and making it even better. You, of course, had stuff like Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3. I know a lot of people don't love Silent Hill for the Room, and that's fair because it's not a Silent Hill game, but I really enjoyed playing it back in the day. It had some good scares. $100. And then you had stuff like Resident Evil Outbreak and Outbreak File 2, which was like a 4-player scenario-based action roguelite sort of, where you picked a character that had a role, like they had classes, and you could go into levels with up to 4 players, solve puzzles, and figure out how to escape. It was one of those like novel early online games that still has one of the biggest fan bases as far as Resident Evil goes, which is crazy because if we're being real, it's not really the greatest game in the world. So like, yeah, the PS2 being 25 years old is kind of crazy because I still remember going to all my friends' houses because they all had them and I had an Xbox for a little bit, and just enjoying so many different great games on it. Like, I picked my favorites here, but I could go on for an hour with incredible games that got their start on the PlayStation 2, and a lot of them are still around today and people still have nostalgic memories for them. So it would be awesome to see Sony kind of go back to the drawing board on the PS1 mini and release a PS2 mini. I mean, you can do it on a Steam Deck right now. If you get this program called EmuDeck, you install it, it sets up every emulator, then you just go find the ISO files, drag and drop them, and you can get up in gaming in just a few seconds. I can't imagine it would be that hard to do what they did with the PS1 mini and just put a Raspberry Pi in a little mini PS2 case and sell it for $100 with some of the greatest games ever. The only reason I don't think they're really willing to do that right now is because they're pushing PS Plus Premium so hard, and like PS2 games are included with that when they decide to port them up to PS5, and then the emulator is still not that great. So it would be cool to see some more PS2 related hardware. But man, that console and its library aged like a fine wine, and I think it totally deserves to be the best-selling console of all time. You just know it burns Nintendo so bad that they've never been able to beat it. Like, they got close, I think, with the DS original version, and then they got close with the Nintendo Switch one, but no dice as of yet. But another area where Sony was really good was with handhelds, which is why I'm so excited with all these rumors coming out about, you know, the PS6 handheld that's going to be able to play PS5, PS4, and maybe even PS6 games. We're looking at 2028 on that, but Sony has a pretty popular handheld out right now called the PlayStation Portal. So as it stands right now, the only way to really interact with this thing is to own a PS5 already. So you'd connect it to your home Wi-Fi network, you'd link it to your PS5, and then you stream games directly from your PS5 to the Portal. And honestly, it seems like it does a pretty good job. I'm not really that into streaming games. I don't like the latency, I don't like the blocky textures. I'd rather just pay for the game and pay for better hardware and play it on that hardware, which I know is like a first world mentality, but I guess I live in the first world, baby. Like, I don't know. I've been buying games at the store and putting them in my consoles since day one, or at least downloading them since that became a thing. So I'd just like to stick with my ways and do that into the future. But this new feature that's coming to the PlayStation Portal is honestly pretty interesting. So some users on the PS Portal are noticing that on the PlayStation Store, there's a new little icon that pops up underneath the game when you can pre-order it that says you can pre-order this game right now and stream it to your PS Portal directly without downloading it the day it's released. So that's very similar to what Xbox is kind of trying to do, where, like, you know, you can pay for Xbox Game Pass Cloud or whatever, and then once you do that, you don't need a PC, you don't need an Xbox console, all you need is a phone with a backbone controller, and without any console to tie the game to, you can stream it directly from Xbox's cloud services. So that's exactly how this is going to work. Like, you'll be able to pre-order games on the web client, maybe even from the PS Portal itself, and then suddenly you have a $200 into the PlayStation ecosystem. Would I recommend it? Hell no. I would not do this as your go-to gaming solution ever, because it's so reliant on Wi-Fi, and the whole idea of having a handheld is to play it outside of your house. And I cannot imagine how terrible playing PS5 games over the internet would be, even if you're streaming them from the cloud on like Starbucks Wi-Fi. As someone who works a lot at Starbucks, I edit most of these videos at the Starbucks like a mile away from me. Their Wi-Fi either works okay for downloading trailers and stuff that you see as B-roll in this video, or it just doesn't work at all. And I go through that at basically every coffee shop I go to. So like, if you wanted to use it at the airport, I mean, it's going to be even worse, because not only are airport Wi-Fi networks notoriously terrible, you also got like a billion people trying to access them at all the same time, and they're expensive because some of them aren't even free anymore. So if you're someone who's like trying to be extra dirt cheap and that's your goal, like it makes you feel good to be as cheap as possible, then maybe this is a good way to get in on gaming, because, you know, you could subscribe to PS Plus, get access to some cloud PS5 games, or you could buy games on the PlayStation Store and stream them directly to this handheld. But I think it's just a cool little extra added bonus that gets added on top of that purchase you made for like 200 or 250 bucks back in the day. And I like that. That's how the Steam Deck works. Valve consistently adds in new features every single month, and it makes you feel really good. You're like, oh, I bought this product like 3.5 years ago for 400 bucks, and it's still getting great updates to this day, and more games are playable every day. The more they can do stuff like that, the more goodwill it builds up with the community, and that's exactly what I like to see from Sony. I just never want this to be the default way to play games. It's one of those situations where Microsoft is kind of twisting the arm of the entire industry by doing bad things, I would say, because it's really their only option. I just don't want streaming to be the only way to play games, because, you know, then the corporations have complete control. I know they have like almost complete control right now, but like once you start taking away people's ability to play games offline, download them to their console, that's when you start seeing crazy stuff like them tracking your engagement or putting live ads in games. Because if the game is always online truly because it lives online, they could update the ad on like a billboard in the next Forza Horizon every day with like Whopper ads over and over again. And that's when it just becomes less of an entertainment piece and more of like a Ready Player One life simulation. And I don't want that. I don't want my whole life to be ingrained with video games. I want video games to be something like movies, where at the end of a long work day, I can boot up my PS5, I can boot up my Steam Deck on the couch next to my wife and play games on it. That's all I really needed to do. And it's never both, right? Like if they want the future to be streaming, the future is going to be streaming. It's not going to be where it is right now, where you can play games natively or you could stream. They're going to pick one thing and hammer it home. So that's why I'm always so skeptical and so dubious of anything Microsoft does. But I don't think this is like a whole console war type deal thing that's worth starting up over this. Like, I think it's cool that Sony's adding features to the PS Portal, because it's not inexpensive, but it's also like fairly priced. So like anything they add at this point is just icing on the cake. Anyway, that brings us to the third news story here, which is about Bluepoint's canceled God of War live service game. And now that we've seen screenshots from it, I'm a little bit 50-50. Like, on the one hand, do I really want a God of War live service game? Hell no. I don't want that brand cheapened like that. I don't want to see microtransactions in a live service game. But like, I see the like thinking that Sony had, where they were like, well, we need a live service game. God of War is our biggest IP. We can give it to Bluepoint so that we don't have to take away resources from Santa Monica Studio. That really does seem like a no-brainer, but at the end of the day, I don't want a live service God of War game. But on the other hand, now that I've seen screenshots and I know that they were working in the Greek era, I just want a Greek era God of War back so bad. I don't hate the Norse mythology one. I'd be fine if they made a third game in that trilogy that took place in, you know, the Norse mythology. I thought that environment was awesome, but there's just something really cool about the Greek stuff. And honestly, I'm pretty nostalgic for it. So that's definitely clouding my opinion there. But one of the big silver lining pieces here is that they've obviously built out like so many assets for this Greek era God of War game. They were working on it for around 4 or 5 years, it seems like, because it got canceled earlier this year and Demon Souls came out in 2020. So I'm sure they built out a ton of stuff for it. And we do know that they're hiring right now for a third-person action game. So when you put all the pieces together, I could definitely see a world where they're taking some of the assets they already created for this live service game and they're creating a Greek mythology God of War spin-off game maybe, or a game where you get to go back and play as Kratos once again. And I'm fine with that. God of War is, again, Sony's biggest franchise that they have in terms of gaming that they own outside of Spider-Man. So I'm fine with them kind of reinvesting in it and getting other studios to work in that world, because you see Xbox doing it with their big franchises. Like Bethesda is so busy right now working on fixing Starfield and making the Elder Scrolls 6. They don't have anyone to work on Fallout. And you know, Fallout's massive right now. The show is actually good. People really want a new game. So I'd imagine that over at Xbox, they've probably got one of their other 15 billion studios working on a new Fallout game, with Bethesda kind of overseeing it in a similar way that they did with Fallout 76. But yeah, they've spent so much time building out Greek era God of War assets in like the God of War newer engine that like looks good and looks PS5 worthy. So I'd like to see that go to use with a brand new God of War game. But anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.